Now the next thing we need to do is to go ahead and save information relating to our current location address to our provider class. Now I'm going to go ahead and show off why we need to save this to the provider class by using the completed project. So as you can see, this is one screen, the main screen, and if I go ahead and click on the search destination panel, it's going to take us to a new page, and as you can see, our current address has already been previewed, and this data is coming from somewhere, right? So the provider makes it easy for data to be accessible in different places within our application. So that's why we need to go ahead and save information about our current location to the provider class. Now we are not going to just be saving the place address, right? So we need to save the geographic coordinates, that is the longitude and latitude. We need to save, of course, the place address. We need to kind of even save maybe the place ID and other things like that. So because we have multiple information or attributes of a particular place, we need to kind of create an address class, right? So that's the first thing we need to do. So to be able to do that in a very organized way, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. So this folder, I'm going to call it data models. So that's where I'm going to be saving all my models or all my different classes. So the first model or the first class that we need to create will be for our address. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new file here, a new .dat file. So I'm going to call it address. So the name of the class is going to be address. So what fields are we going to have in this class? I think we need to have the place name, the latitude, the longitude, the place ID, and the place formatted address. So let's go ahead and do that. The place name is going to be a string field or a string property. The next is going to be the latitude, which is going to be a double variable or a double field. The next is going to be the longitude. The next is going to be place ID. And the next is going to be the place formatted address. Alright, so now that we have that, the next thing we need to do is to set up our constructor. So here I'm going to have address. I'm going to have this.placeID, this.latitude, and we need to just go ahead and do this for all the fields that we have in this class. So now that address class is ready, where is the first place we are going to use it? I'm going to go to our helpers method in the place where we are actually retrieving information about our current location, which is here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new instance of address. So here I'm going to go ahead and say address. I can call it pickup address. So this is going to be equal to new address. Alright, so now we have an instance of address. We just need to go ahead and assign values to the properties. So here I'm going to have pickup address dot longitude. So the longitude value is going to come from the position which we passed into this method as soon as our map has successfully been created. So here I'm going to have position dot longitude, and the next is the latitude. Now the next thing I'm going to do will be to save the address. So I'm going to go ahead and say place name will be equal to place address. Bam. Alright, so now that we've been able to gather some useful information about our pickup address, the next thing we need to do is to go ahead and save this information about our pickup address to our provider class. Now to be able to do this, we're going to go ahead and open up our app data class, and we need to write some code here. Okay, now the first thing we need to do will be to create a new instance of pickup address. So here I'm going to have address. I'm going to call it pickup address. Alright, now the next thing we need to do is to create a method that can actually allow us to update the value of this pickup address. So whenever the app starts, the value of the pickup address is going to be null. So we need to have a method that can actually enable us to update this value. So I'm going to go ahead and create this method. I'm going to call it update pickup address. So this method will have a parameter, and the parameter is going to be an address. can simply call it pickup. So I can go ahead and say pickup address will be equal to pickup. So what I've successfully done is to update the value of our pickup address that is available throughout the application. Now to conclude this process, I'm going to go ahead and call the notify listener method. So the notify listener method is actually what broadcasts the change that we just made throughout our application. Let's say for instance in one of the screens we actually have a test widget that gets its value from the pickup address. So it's only when we call the notify listener that the value displayed in the test widget can actually be changed to the new information. So that's why the notify listener is very important, and that's why we had to create a method that will allow us to update and also notify all the listeners, right? Now the next thing we want to do is to go ahead and call this method and use it to update our pickup address. Now I'm going to return to the helpers method. Now let's go ahead and update our pickup address. So before we do anything, we first of all need to import our provider. So we can go to our documentation page and copy this line of code. I'm going to paste it here. Alright, so I can now go ahead and say provider dot of contest, right? But before we get to this point, we need to go ahead and pass in our app data class here. Alright, so we can now go ahead and call the update pickup address method, and I'm going to go ahead and pass in the pickup address. So we actually have an issue with this contest. So what I'm going to do will be to add contest to as one of the parameters into this method. So this will go ahead and resolve this issue. And another thing we need to do is to go ahead and set the listen to false, because we don't actually want this to be listening to anything. We only just want to go ahead and update our pickup address. So now that we successfully save our pickup address, the next thing we want to do is to confirm that our provider class works. So we're gonna have to try to retrieve our pickup address using the provider package. So we need to return to the main page. Now I'm gonna need to pass in context here to resolve this error. Alright, so this will resolve this issue. Now what I want to do will be to go ahead and look for a test widget. So my intent is to go ahead and display our place address on that widget by leveraging the power of our provider. Okay, so what I'm going to do will be to try to display our place address on this test widget. We first of all need to import the provider package. One way to do it is just to go ahead and type out provider dot of contest. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the type, that is where the data is coming from. This actually needs to be imported as well, but I will leave that to Android Studio to help out. So I'm going to go ahead and access our pickup address, and I'm going to go ahead and access the place name. So what we have in mind is that as soon as we update our pickup address, the place name inside of the address will display on this test widget. We first of all need to confirm that our pickup address is not null. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this, and I'm going to put it inside a parenthesis, and I'm going to say if this is not null, then this is going to be equal to this. Alright, then if this is not the case, our test widget is going to read add home. Okay, so this is basically all that we need to do. So to verify that everything that we've done so far is actually working properly, I'm going to go ahead and run our application. So it also makes sense that this time you start your application from code so that all the packages that we've installed can actually build properly. So let's go ahead and do that. So we need to remember to look out for the changes on the test widget. Okay. So as you can see, we successfully updated this test widget with the address of our current location. So guys, we've successfully seen how to make use of provider package within our application, and that's something. So congratulations guys. But before we go, we need to go ahead and return this back to normal. So we actually did that just to test out our provided package. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, delete all of this. Okay, so everything is back to normal. So this will be all for now. So see you in the next class.